Hi there. Sorry about that. We seem to have connection problems with the internet. I'm not sure how far Emma we got there with your answer, but I will endeavour to find out and update you next week on what's happening. Now, unfortunately, with us having to restart this, the rest of the comments haven't come back up. I think the next one on the list was Richard Langford, but I'm sorry, Richard, I didn't see what your comment was before. So let me go to some of the ones that we've had emailed in this week. Let me just have a look. This one is from Graham. Graham asks, "Hi Craig, I am a business who did not qualify for a business grant as I'm over the threshold for small business grant and not classed as retail, hospitality or leisure. Will the new top-up grant scheme be available to businesses like mine that have fallen down the gaps of government support?" Well, Graham, what I can tell you is that the government have, as you know, or imply in your as Graham you imply there, the government have indeed given local authorities some more money to help those that have fallen through the gaps. The only problem is they have given local authorities they've given the right. Sorry, Graham, they've given the right to discretion to local authorities, and what we are waiting on is we're waiting for Calder to come out with the criteria they're going to use. Obviously, I don't have any power over Calder Council, but I have fed into them that I think they should be looking very much about to helping those that have fallen through the gap. So we're just waiting for the criteria for those discretionary grants to come out. They did say they were going to come out last week, but to date we still haven't seen anything. And I have my next conference call with the leader and the chief executive on Friday, and I'm hoping that we've got the criteria out by then. But keep an eye on Calderdale's website because that's where it will be announced, and that's under the COVID section, business support. Right, Richard, I apologise and thanks for coming back to me, but you've got here, "Hi Craig, the A629 is about to be closed. This is going to be problematic given the bridge in Brighouse is closed and Elland Road is still closed, neither with any planned repairs that I know of. How can barrier replacement take priority over repairing roads which are actually broken?" I'm not aware of plans to close the A629 unless you're telling me differently. You're absolutely right. The bridge in Brighouse is closed, and Elland Wood Bottom or Elland Road is closed at Elland Wood Bottom. There are plans for repairs, and I'm looking forward to an update on Friday when I speak to the chief executive and indeed the leader of the council. But if you have some details about the A629 being closed, please let me know. Okay, on to a couple more questions, and I apologise about the IT again this week. It looks as though Facebook's been overloaded, but let's see what we've got here. I've done Graham. So this one's from Janet. "Hi Craig, my father-in-law is a resident at a local care home. Luckily they haven't had a single case of coronavirus, but I am aware of some in Calderdale that have had outbreaks. What is the government doing to protect my father-in-law who is so very vulnerable and elderly? The virus would finish him off." And that's from Janet. Janet, you're absolutely right that the infection rate in the communities has gone down massively, but we still see this stubbornly high infection rate in care homes. What the government are doing and what is happening locally is that we have a serious push to get testing done. That's testing of staff and people coming into homes, and the residents as well. That's been going on now at least for a couple of weeks at scale in Calder. So that's very similar to in your own home. If obviously people have got symptoms, then they need to self-isolate, stay away, and if they in fact get symptoms that are much more severe and unable to cope with, then 111 is the first point of call. But if you are in severe difficulty, then of course dial 999, and that's the same whether you live in a home or a personal home or indeed a care home. Okay. This one's from Penny. What's happening with Parkwood Cram? I've heard the council are now allowing service inside. Why have they changed their mind? Probably, Penny, because they, I know I covered this a little bit earlier, but probably because they've realised that they went far beyond what was appropriate, and they have done a U-turn, and we should thank them for being brave enough to do a U-turn when they know they're wrong. And I think that's definitely the case in this situation. But now, thankfully, I think they've put right the wrong decision that was taken. Hi Craig, I am self-employed and am pleased about the support offered through the self-employed income scheme. Can you confirm, do I need to prove I've been affected by coronavirus in order to apply? And that's from Helen. The answer to your question for the self-employed scheme, Helen, is no, not at all. You can apply. You can apply as of last week. The site was open, and the criteria is that you have tax returns for the last 3 years. It will be taken on the average of your tax returns, and unlike the furlough scheme, with the self-employed scheme, you can physically go out and work. So it's treated much more like a grant than it physically paying your wages. But no, you don't have to prove that at all. You just need to provide all the details that they request on the website. So I hope that's helpful. Just on the self-employed scheme, we heard last week that the furlough scheme is being extended. We still haven't heard whether the self-employed scheme is going to be extended or not. But I dare say we will be getting some more announcements over the next week or two. This is from Nigel. Nigel says, hi Craig, I'm worried about the government have started to lift the lockdown measures too soon. Last weekend showed a total lack of regard for social distancing and the police seem powerless to stop it. What are my thoughts? Well, I'm not convinced that they've started lockdown too soon. I think if you have a look at what has changed from lockdown, basically we can go outside more. Before we could only go out for an hour. Now we go outside. We can go outside. We can travel if we so wish, but we have to ensure that we are social distancing, and that's an incredibly important part of this whole phased release of the lockdown. I don't think the police feel powerless to stop this stuff. My understanding, speaking to our local police, is that they are applying a softly approach anyway, which I think is the right decision. Unless, of course, people are openly flaunting and putting other people at risk. The police have and they will prosecute people. The fines for prosecution have raised from where we were a couple of weeks ago. But according to the police, who I do speak to fairly regularly, they do feel as though they have the right amount of powers, and even though they are trying to encourage people to do the right thing before slapping a fine on them, if people are persistent and they are indeed brazenly doing the wrong thing and putting people at harm, then they in fact will fine them. But in answer to your question, no, I don't think the lockdown measures have been released too early. I go back to what I said when we were talking about the teachers earlier. We do have a very low infection rate in Calder. So it's probably the right balance of doing it. But people do have to do the right thing, because if they don't do the right thing, the government will reinforce lockdown measures. Okay, I don't think I've got any more questions. Well, there is one more, and it's from a lady called Tricia, and it says, "Dear Craig, I'm a teacher, and I'm worried about the government guidance for opening up schools." This is the reverse to what we were talking about earlier on. What are your thoughts on the concerns of teachers regarding the government's apparent lack of understanding about the dangers and the spread of coronavirus within schools? Trish, listen, I've said probably all I need to say on that. I don't agree with you. I think we're all in this together, and people have to play their part. Whether that's a nurse on the front line, whether it's a firefighter, a police officer, MP, or indeed a teacher, we all have our part to play. And I think for all the reasons that I've already said in the webcast this afternoon, I don't agree with what you're saying, and I think teachers need to take responsibility, and they need to get their professional heads together and not kick back on this, but actually put their heads together and work out how and why we can open our schools safely, and in what mode. There's already examples. Some of our schools have been open to care for key workers when the infection rate has been something like 5 times higher than it is now. The NHS nurseries have been open throughout the whole period, and I think there's some good examples there of how this can be done safely. Obviously, it will depend on each school, building, environment, all those types of things that need to be taken into account. But on the whole, I think schools should be wherever they can. I just think wherever they can, we need to make sure that schools are reopened. Let me have a look, see what other... Oh, here's a good one. Robert Gibson. Craig, why did you vote against the amendment in the Agriculture Bill which would have shown your support to British food standards? Hang on, let me just have a look. British food standards and British farmers at a time when we should be supporting British food farmers and growers more than ever. There is a real risk of cheaper imported food, especially from the USA. Okay, Robert, you're talking out of your backside. This is absolute nonsense, left-wing propaganda that is just not true. We already have food standards in this country that we will adhere to going forward. And just because we've left the EU, it doesn't mean to say our standards can get even stronger. What we are unable to do, and what this amendment in this bill tried to do, was it tried to force the UK government being able to go into foreign nationals, abattoirs, and farms and all those things, and inspect and impose British standards on other countries. We cannot do that by international law. So it's not that I voted against me showing any support for British food standards. Of course, I support British food standards. We have some of the highest food standards in the world, and long may it be. But to say that by voting against this amendment, which was an absolute nonsense, unenforceable, and would tie the hands of every trade bill that this government has to do going forward, is just not a practical thing to do. But that doesn't mean to say that we don't support British farmers, British food standards at all. That's just not the case. You know very well you have, but are dodging an answer. This is from Kenneth Clarkson. Oh, Kenneth, I await your reply on my question regarding identity card issued to all UK citizens and the return of the South Coast boat refugee. Kenneth, we covered this last week, and I'm fundamentally against ID cards to anybody, and I can tell you that we already have passports. That's enough said on it. Daniel asks about can you push the government to help the events industry that has been hung out to dry? We can't qualify for the grants and rate relief. I absolutely agree, Daniel. And as we discussed a little bit earlier on, this is one of the areas that we've been feeding into Treasury and indeed the Chancellor himself. So they are very, very much aware of what they call the 5% that has fallen through the gap. Right, Janice Eden asks, any advice for those of us on lockdown until the end of June, as we have been instructed by the NHS? We never hear anything about this on the briefing. I presume you're talking about the vulnerable people that have been asked to stay at home for 12 weeks, Janice. The advice is very, very clear that as lockdown eases, those that are vulnerable must stay at home. So I'm sorry to tell you, you've got a little while to go as yet, and there is lots of help and support, whether it's through our local authority, whether it's through the food parcels that are being sent out, and there's lots of organisations there, Janet, but it's very, very important that you stay at home. Robert, you've come back. So are you saying that British food standards could be used as a bargaining chip? No, quite the opposite, Robert. We are not allowed to use British food standards as a bargaining chip, which is what the amendment in the bill wanted to happen. And it can't do by international law. So I'm sorry, but you've really got the wrong end of the stick with this. British food standards cannot be used as a bargaining chip because by law it's not allowed to happen in international law. So that's why I voted against it. Not that I don't stand up for British food standards. We have British food standards and it's important we maintain them, but we cannot use those at all, which the amendment would have forced the government to do, hence tying the hands, because internationally they would have been breaking the law. I hope that helps and clarifies. And unless Sophie's about to tell me via any other means, let me have a look. I think that's all we've got for this week. So thank you very much for listening in. Keep your questions coming in. Just a final one there. Gina Baxendale asks, any idea when colleges are going to open, please? Well, the government have said very clearly which educational establishments they would like to open at present. We'll have to wait and see for the next announcement whether there's going to be a bigger rollout there, Gina. But at this particular moment in time, the answer to your question is no. I do know a lot of teachers, and a lot of teachers do this, and I can tell you that there's a lot of remote learning going on, but the physical building open at this particular moment in time, I don't have an answer for you. Robert, thanks for the thumbs up. Let's wait and see what happens with that one. Okay, if there's nothing else for this week, hang on, this is the message from Sophie. Let me just ask. Sorry, every time I do that, I cut it off. So I think that's it. No more questions. Thank you very much, and stay tuned again this time next week, 3 o'clock next Tuesday. Send your questions in via my email, craig.whittaker.mp@parliament.uk, or indeed, if you want to watch and you want to ask a question while we're doing it like we're doing today, then please do so. My telephone lines are still open for the office, 01484 711 260. Howard's at the end of the phone taking the calls, sat in his lounge room at home. We've had the phone diverted. Sorry, Howard. I know you've been inundated, but you're going to get more inundated now. And of course, the whole team are monitoring emails as they come in. So keep your questions coming in, and if there's anything serious or urgent, please highlight that, and we'll do all we can to help you out. Thanks very much. Take care.